I am Manoj Agarwal. I'm the group editor at Banking Frontiers. I'm the founder editor. I've had the pleasure of interacting with so many people in the financial sector and learning so much from them, and then sharing that same knowledge and insights and wisdom with the community at large. Been a very fantastic role for me. I look forward to one more interesting session today. Let's start with our introductions. Can we have Sharath give a brief introduction about himself?
Hey, Manoj, thank you. It's always a pleasure joining you guys in these events. I'm a technologist with over a couple of decades of experience. I've been an entrepreneur before and then worked with large internet companies before joining Airtel Payments Bank about 3 years back. We are a technology company. We look at ourselves as a technology company delivering banking services. We are building an internet scale bank that is millions of customers interacting with us on a daily basis and using multiple use cases where they engage with us. And hence, we adopt a lot of modern internet technologies, and APIs and open banking are a key enabler for us as a success. So, very excited to be here. Thank you.
Great to hear that background. Can we have an introduction of Mr. Babu Thomas?
Thank you for giving this opportunity. I had the IT department of Federal Bank. I've been in this related to IT for the last, you can say, 22 years in various roles. So even though I joined bank as a general officer, but I have become, on my journey, become a technologist, you can say so, but still bridging gap between business and technology.
Thank you so much. Sony, can we have your introduction briefly?
Yeah, so I'm Sony. I head digital banking vertical in South Indian Bank. My career track is pretty similar to that of Babu. I'm a techno banker.
Okay.
And the digital banking vertical that I head right now is around 3 years old, and API is a very important segment that we target. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Basan, can we have your introduction? Though, in fact, you don't need an introduction, but ek line, do line.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me for this forum. As you know, that I'm Shivkumar Basin, and currently I'm working with the National Stock Exchange as Chief Technology and Operations Officer.
Okay. And you were the CTO at SBI earlier, and then
Yes,
that
yeah,
BNP Paribas.
that's right. Thank you.
Great to have you here. Gentlemen, we always have one IT company as a knowledge partner to bring a different focus to the discussion, to bring a different dimension to the discussion. Today we have with us international company F5, and we have one representative from F5, Sean. Your introduction, please, Sean.
My name is Sean Becker. I'm based out of Singapore, and I am a principal security advisor at F5. And my day-to-day job involves looking into technology and the implications and how different regulations and stuff work towards building a better future.
That's great, Sean. Thank you. Good to have you. We have one missing person, Prasanna Lohar. Hopefully, he will join us soon. Let me start with a very generic opening question. What are the noteworthy developments in the progress of open banking? May I start with, let's say, Mr. Babu. Babu joined us first. So, Mr. Babu, you have the privilege of responding also first.
Yeah, thank you. Not for the development is it is everybody has accepted API banking as a reality, and it is going to be the way forward. So basically, that is the development in the last few months, especially during the Corona period. This particular what you call feeling like that API banking is a way to move forward to connect between the ecosystem players in the ecosystem, banks, and the required fintechs and other corporates. I think that is one noteworthy development which has happened in the with respect to open banking. It has everybody has accepted it as a reality, and we're now looking forward to the development of that.
And how would you describe in terms of one is acceptance, and in terms of actually open banking making a difference to the bank? What kind of things has it actually begun to make a difference?
Yeah, basically those
bank.
areas where banks could not go, bank could not reach out, that is getting done through this open banking, through the partners and other stakeholders in the business. Because banks, earlier some of the areas where banks were not able to go, microfinance and all, you don't require to have a what you call microfinance partner or anything, but you can have identify a good partner and get the things done through them. I think one
Okay.
of the example.
That's a very good example. Let me ask the same question to Mr. Bhasin. What do you see as APIs and open banking making an impact in 2020?
I think it makes a huge impact, and they have been making for quite some time. Actually, as open banking started first in Europe, and there they have set up this standard that for the personal banking area, if some of the interfaces can be exposed over over web, so that those based on the certain privileges or permissions given by the individual customer to an institution, that from across financial institution their portfolio could be gathered and aggregated, and some of the products across the different financial institutions can be compared, just like modern days currently, the travel industry, Trivago or something like that, where the different financial products can be compared, and then the customer can make a informed decision that this is the most beneficial product for the financial for his or her financial needs. So that's where the concept started with, and that became first as a account aggregation services, and then further going further as a cross across the financial institution, offering the competitive products, the loan products, comparing the various loan products, and exposing that data, sharing the data with multiple third parties, seeking those permissions from the from the individual customers, and then that so there that portfolio with a very limited information getting available sometimes, there were other opportunities thought that with a reducing the kind of a interference into the day-to-day public life of the customer, but how still people can reach out to the customer more proactively, or financial institutions can reach out to the customer more proactively based on his needs, in a non-intrusive manner. So that was one. These were the architectural principles or design principles that thought of. But later on, actually, as we see now, the APIs are again drawn within the banking institutions, where normally within the bank as well there are multiple departments, and for carrying out within the technology as well there are multiple departments in IT department, within the IT department of a bank, to really make a end-to-end customer journey work, you have interdependencies. And those interdependencies are also like between core banking, between the treasury systems, between the payment systems, between the channel systems. So resolving all those dependencies, the APIs were the best way, but these are the best contract rather than having a very tighter integration. So
Okay.
that is one area where those the APIs could be very very fine grained. There is another level of APIs where the partnership can be drawn with the other financial institutions which are external parties, and which can sometimes, like financial institution may not be the right financial may not be best aware in terms of drawing the best customer experience. So exposing the API, just like a account aggregator service of RBI, which have been going on for quite some time, and so there the objective is that if someone can provide a differential customer experience, and banks expose those APIs, so the much advanced digital channels, can be leveraged. And similarly, in my days with SBI, we have released the digital bank, and the principle of the digital bank was also that which we did not, I think, I don't know, media much talks about that, or any bank official much talks about that. There was one of the objective was that we need to have the APIs exposed by the YONO platform, so that it can be integrated with the other banks' core banking systems or other banks' payment systems, so that they can serve their digitization needs as a developing a as a platform approach. So APIs play all these roles, that if you want to come up with a platform approach, or you want to have a greater partnerships with the fintechs and exposing the right granularity APIs. And I think that apart from the granularity, I think there are many more concerns are there based on the regulatory needs, how the data is being persisted over the API channels, whether it is going to the cloud outside India, whether it is secure, any kind of a personal data or PID data is properly encrypted or not. So all those, like data security, data in transit, data in at rest security. So all those issues also come in while you are coming up with the API framework. So API is not as simple as like exposing a method of a object or something, and then letting people to use it. So it has to be a API has to be much more experience oriented as well. That when the people, the consumers who will consume it, how will they be leveraging? What are the maximum possible use cases can be can be leveraged by the same API?
You have actually summarized all the main points, kind of that I've prepared questions on. So we'll come to one of each point at a time.
Right.
Since you talked about the European origin and Babu talked about the domestic progress, let me ask Shan if you can give some kind of international perspective or Singapore perspective or something that can be relevant for our bankers who are here and the audience who is watching us.
Yeah. So Mr. Babu and Mr. Bashir summarized it very correctly. So I'll give you a little bit more from the regional perspective, as in Asia Pacific, as in what we have seen. So F5 and Twimbit, an analyst firm, we ran a survey and a research to find out what's going on with specifically with open banking. And there were some key points that came up. One, 6 out of 10 people in Asia Pacific are okay to share their information in lieu of personalization services. Secondly, 80% of the people host a smartphone. Now we take these 2 points and club them with technological advancement, and the quest to have friction-free experience while doing banking is actually really fueling open banking in the region. There are other important segments as well, which Mr. Babu covered, specifically with respect to underbanked populations who are not in the mainstream banking segment. So services like microfinance and all can be brought to them. So this is how it is working across the Asia Pacific region. So now regulators, as we talk about them, have been responding differently to these requirements in different regions. So on one hand, we have Australia's consumer data rights, wherein the regulation has mandated that every bank allows their user or consumer to share their data at their will to whatever technology firm they want. They will have the safety net by providing the ratings for this fintech organization. Coming to Singapore, what we see over here is that we have Monetary Authority of Singapore, an association of banks in Singapore. They have worked together. They have come together with a very nice detailed API guidelines. So it basically tells you what are the APIs, what are the product sets that you need to expose, with which and any bank in this region can really take this API playbook and think about what kind of APIs they want to launch. So we are seeing regulators really supporting them. Now, not this kind of thing is common everywhere. We also see places like Indonesia and Philippines, where what we have seen is the regulators have standard banking regulation, but the banks are leading the charter over there. They are looking into these requirements and they are going ahead and opening up the APIs with which they can serve the consumers. So it's an overall distributed landscape within Asia Pacific where we see some places good regulations, more mature ecosystems are coming in because of that. And some places are literally a little bit smaller where you don't have big players, but there is still decent uptake of open banking services and open APIs where the banks are opening them by taking a slight amount of risk and trying to cover up with the technological gap.
Thanks, Shan. So I guess world over also there will be similar stories to what you talked about Asia
Yes.
Pacific, correct?
Yes, exactly. So, as Mr. Basin mentioned, it started with European Union with PSD2. UK has its own version of it in form of CMA, and we have seen similar initiatives coming across from the Arab world and even from United States. So there is
Oh,
regulations and there are guidelines that's coming up for open banking across the world.
so actually that's good in the sense guidelines makes it easier for the banks to coordinate and to go along on the route,
Yeah.
right? Now let's come to Sony and Sharath. My question to you, gentlemen, is since you're all both of you are from the technical kind of background, when it comes to putting APIs into place, whether external facing or internal facing, what kind of KPIs are most important from your perspective for an API to be used effectively? What kind of performance issues or security issues or whatever other issues? Typically, and of course, every API will have different particular KPIs that are relevant. But commonly, what do you see as what are the common KPIs that you really emphasize across the API spectrum? Who wants to start? Sony? No
I'll
problem.
go in first. So I guess the context is pretty clear in terms of where the world is headed as far as open banking is concerned, as all the speakers have already mentioned. In India, I think one story that probably needs a lot of highlighting is the UPI one, which is essentially the most important transformation that has happened on the transaction space across the globe. With all of us knowing that we have already hit a 2 billion mark in the last month,
Hmm.
uh, that's poised for a humongous growth going forward, and that opens up the most important, because that's one classic example of how interoperability with which API is closely linked. Because if you need interoperability, you need to have standard APIs, you need to have protocols that talk to each other, and systems that are capable of handling huge volumes due to the scale up that happens today. People like all of us, the bankers sitting out here, understands the real value of how API can transform your entire day-to-day life, because I don't know what is going to happen when, let's say, an Amazon Great Indian Festival starts, because my customer could actually be transacting using Google Pay or Amazon Pay or Paytm or any one of those channels, and I am the one who's ending up processing the transaction. So scalability of the entire ecosystem, starting from the API onto the entire downstream systems, including control measures, fraud control measures, all of this becomes the most important criteria for a technologist. The
Okay.
second aspect would be the security side, where you're looking at how can you make the API secure, because at the end of the day, even though you know the partner with whom you're sharing the API with, there could be other downstream systems also who are consuming the data partly with the customer consent or without the customer consent, as the case may be. Therefore, the security of the complete life cycle of the entire customer journey, where you also play an integral part as an API partner, that becomes the next important thing. And as far as the business is concerned, it's all about the monetization aspect. How much of money can I make from the whole journey? And the last stakeholder is the customer. And I think somebody was referring to the fact that the entire thing is about the customer journey. So when I plan my API story, I should also know at what point should I enter the customer journey.
Sharath, would you like to add something to what Sony has mentioned?
Sure. I think for a bank, open banking is all about being a platform player and realizing that as a bank, there are some key goals that we have to achieve, which is ensuring that we build customer trust, ensuring that customers trust us to store key assets with us and believe that we will handle them safely,
Hmm.
ensuring that we are putting their needs first before anything else. As the bank is focusing on this, there are a lot of customers who will come to the platform, to the bank.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are services that the customers expect. Unlike maybe a couple of decades back, where customers used to walk into a branch and would be happy. Now, we need to be looking at how we can engage with the customer on practically a daily basis. And for us to be successful compared to an internet company who's doing that, we need to realize that we cannot build everything. So we need partners. And the partners are the teams which will have the niche understanding of the customers, provide specific capabilities and flows which are very clearly owned for them as a product and a business company. And then they need us to fulfill those services, either to our own customers or to walk in customers of ours. At least that's how we think about open banking as a platform. The second thing, this is our philosophy, at least towards open banking. What are important? I think Sony mentioned it. Mr. Shiv also mentioned it. The key is, again, ensure that customer trust is there. Hence, privacy becomes a very important aspect. Consent becomes a very important aspect. We're very excited that account aggregator kind of models where we being a platform, somebody can ask us for customer data through a very formal mechanism that the customer consent, explicit consent is available, is very encouraging, right? So some fintech can go to the customer, has reached to a customer, can ask, hey, I want to provide this service to you. For this, I need this data from the bank. If that is approved by the customer, that's a wonderful model of explicit consent, which can enable this extremely well. So customer trust, privacy is very important. Security is extremely critical from the context that, again, we're building this with partners whom we know, might not know. The channels that they're accessing from could be very, very variant. Ensuring that security is critical is something that is very, very important. And finally, we need to ensure that we talked about privacy, we talked consent, we talked about security. Finally, scalability. Ensuring that our systems, banking systems, are always up. I mean, 99.99% or whatever they are up, and that is extremely critical, because if my bank is operating from a particular time to time, a branch, it's okay. But now I have outsourced my APIs to a third party who's providing services to the customer 24/7. My systems have to support that partner.
Correct.
So that scalability and this thing is also important.
Okay, that's great. So we have covered some of the technical issues and the introductory aspects. As I was preparing and researching for this discussion, Shiv, I came across an article written by you, or at least an article in which you have quoted that, and I'll quote from this. I've taken those notes. Once customer value has been defined in products and services, digital technologies can be leveraged to deliver low touch, high velocity, and connected experiences that deliver customer satisfaction and operational efficiency. I understood all of that, but one part I was not sure, and that is the part about connected experiences. So I was wondering whether that refers to API through API or some other kind of connected experiences. If it is API, can you share on that? What you
See, actually, the connected experience is, about, whether it is device neutral or channel neutral. That's the connected experience I was referring to. So, but at the same time, to make it, the device or channel neutral, only that cannot be supported unless you have a platform approach, whatever you are delivering for your system. And platform approach means that the experience APIs, the transactional APIs are exposed. So suppose I am processing a loan application, and I have uploaded my details, or I have entered my details and did the analysis that I need this amount of loan, and what kind of APR or what kind of interest rates will be charged, and what kind of EMI and all I have to pay. So it looks very attractive to me, but by that time I got distracted and I left the channel then and there, and I was probably doing it at my home on my laptop or desktop, something like that. And I went to the breakfast table, and then I moved to the after breakfast, moved in the car, and suddenly I realized, okay, I was trying to do that, and then when I log in again through mobile, so I shall be able to go to the same place where I left that process.
Got it.
Right?
Understood.
And so something like that. So and similarly, like I still could not process the whole application because of like various documents need to be uploaded. Again, I come back at home in the evening and I upload all my documents, by scanning or whatever way it is. So all these various steps will require various kinds of APIs it might be sometimes a lot of fintech collaboration based APIs which need to be used by these processes. Sometimes these APIs will be exposed by the banking system to integrate with the channel or integrate with the fintech. So,
Okay.
ultimately, API is the engine behind all this, and the one of the key KPI I think is what we were all discussing about is the performance and the how scalable or how good the response time of those APIs are. Because given the digital channels and how much given now 5G and all are coming, I think definitely we will have the APIs channel are going to thrive and entire digital is going to thrive. But given the now the payload requirement, I think so for improving the scalability and performance of the APIs, and a lot of these things, operations API driven, get done in memory. So the payload of the APIs have to be best optimized. And what the granularity of the API should be, so it all matters. The key KPIs are security, definitely, data privacy, catering to under security, and then the performance, which is driven by the payload, fine-grained, coarse-grained APIs. So some of these are the key KPIs, which we need to pay attention to really having a truly connected experience.
Fine graining of APIs is a new term that
Yeah.
I've heard just today. That's interesting. Since all of you have talked about security, let's delve into security a little bit. And one of the things I learned recently about security is, earlier days security was always outside the system, someone coming in and breaking into the branch or into the computer or into the server or whatever. These days we see more and more of security attacks happening from within. The underlying connectivity that the bank has applied, whether it's through APIs or internet banking or mobile banking, the existing resources, the existing applications, the existing business logic of the bank being compromised or being misused in some way or the other. So the security attacks are happening from inside the system by whoever, as opposed to earlier some dacoit coming into a branch with a gun and pointing it at the teller. So apart from data, I'm seeing that more and more systems are being compromised or are being attacked. And how do you see that API, which is actually very clearly exposing the bank to the outside world in a much bigger way? How do you see particularly security systems being fine-tuned for the API economy, for the API ecosystem? Something specific has to be done, which is different from what you do for servers or databases or something else.
So if I add it, very quickly, that apart from programmatic approach, nowadays all these modern APIs are, to make them scalable, they're all hosted on the API gateways. And most of the API gateways, whether they are open source or they are licensed or they are available as a cloud service, most of them have some of the security features built in, like the velocity rule, which is like how many times the same interface is invoking a one particular API in a fraction of second. Pretty much like ATM example, like when you use the card, you know that how many with a single card, how many transactions can be done at a time by a ATM kiosk. So similarly, on online transaction, how much kind of a concurrency and all could be drawn. So velocity checks can be put in place by the API gateway. Similarly, that there could be a capping, like there could be some kind of a DDoS attack, like people are trying to kind of a throttle your APIs by sending huge number of requests using bots recursively, and they are bombarding the API gateway. So the gateways are smarter that if the when you are subscribing to the service, the gateways say that what is the kind of rate you are going to subscribe. Are you going to subscribe 2 transactions per second, 20 transactions per second, or 200 transactions per second? The minute crosses that, it will stop serving actually for some time.
Okay.
Yeah, so it will bring some intervals, after some interval kind of interrupts, the request will be served later. There could be, there are other scenarios as well that sometimes, as you said, within the APIs as well, some people understand that if some hackers, they are very smart, they know that there is a problem in the, in the API programming, internal programming details. If I pass, they keep on experimenting with a certain parameter values. If I pass certain parameter values, I'm getting more than the desired results. So those could be that causing internally SQL injection attacks, or any such kind of attacks as well.
Okay.
So some of these are the areas which API gateways are nowadays very much capable to handle. Even the cross-site scripting, various kind of XML, where largely our APIs are now REST-style APIs. And for the REST-style APIs and all, API gateways are very much capable to handle various XML nature of attacks as well.
Okay, great. Sharad, if I may ask you, do you want to add something to what Shiv has mentioned? Any other different kinds of attacks or vulnerabilities that one needs to be cautious?
No, I think I concur with Shiva on most of the aspects. See, security has always been important for a bank, and internal security or internal threats have always been called out as more riskier than external incoming threats, and that's been truth for security industry across the board always, right? So for APIs also, I think while we might want to look at a periphery API gateway and security that is implemented there, we also need to ensure that depth attacks, which could be happening by directly accessing something that is an internal this thing, ensuring that there's a strong governance model on what are the APIs opened, how are they being accessed, and other stuff, is also very important. I think it needs a holistic view of end to end. Who is accessing it? What did they claim they will access it for? What are they accessing it for? How am I billing them? And then who are the customer and other details that are being accessed is all, I think, something that needs a relatively strong governance model.
Could a gateway approach to internal threats also work? I'm just thinking aloud.
See, gateways normally are about exposing your APIs to the external world. So that's where they normally come in. But there are security standards that you have to apply. In fact, if I'm opening an API, basically internally, it is an API for me, right? That API I'm exposing to third-party partners.
Right.
So when I'm building that microservice or API, internally also, what are my security considerations and others are important to think about. So
okay,
I would think a complete governance model on security is very critical.
Okay. Shan, could you share some insights on what recent developments have happened that the bankers should be aware of or that they can adopt in terms of making sure that they minimize the risk through APIs?
Yeah, so I'd like to build up on the answer that Mr. Shiv and Mr. Sharad gave, right?
Okay.
So just taking one step back and just look at the key use case that was earlier mentioned was about account aggregators, right? So if you look at a pre-open banking world where account aggregators were still operational and working, their main mode of getting this data was screen scraping. So they would write a bot that will come to the page and they will extract the data and they'll move on. So a lot of times banks typically allow some of the screen scrapers to come in because customers are requesting for this kind of data. Okay. So what we have seen in one of our customer was that this legitimate channel that the bank allowed a screen scrape, fintech to come in to scrape their data was actually compromised and used against the bank. So in general, a bank sees close to 98% of authentication success rate, right? So in this particular case that we were as security analysts, when we were analyzing it, we figured out that over a weekend period, the whole authentication rate fell down to 19%. And to Mr. Sarat's point, this should actually be alarm for it, right? Because you're seeing that this is not normal. And when we analyzed this failure rate, right, we figured out that out of close to 75K accounts that were used to log on, basically it was a credential stuffing attack. Only 54K were completely new accounts. So that means somebody used this channel to just bombard the banks and validate credentials so that they can use it later for other fraudulent purposes. And this is just one test case that we saw and we analyzed. We are also seeing that banks in other regions, for example, CBA or Commonwealth Bank of Australia, they made in a public hearing, they shared this information saying that if a person is allowing to a fintech to screen scrape on their behalf, they are actually going to be more susceptible to fraud, that means 2 times more susceptibility to fraud. That is something was an eye-opening that we heard, right? It's a bank saying that on the stats that we have seen, this is how it's working. So open banking and APIs come as a nice breather of relief in this case, because in this case, we don't want the user to actually give out the banking credentials to the third party or fintech provider. There is a legitimate channel wherein using technologies like open authorization, OAuth and OIDC, where what you do is a consent is registered, and using this consent and keys, you're allowed to access these APIs. You never give out the username, passwords, or your OTP to any third-party provider. And so that's how it is securing it first way. Then what we are also seeing is if somebody manages to get hold of this and they try to bombard it. So this is where the rate limiting, as Mr. Shiv mentioned, comes into picture. Rate limiting and quota management can be done at 2 levels. So one type of rate limiting is when somebody is simply bombarding you with network flood packets and trying to bring down your services. And that is where you can actually validate this, clean up the traffic, and only let the legitimate traffic to go back to your application or your API endpoints. The second use case that we have seen is that there are sometimes some of these fintech providers, they might not be as robust in their security as a bank is. And these guys get compromised. And then this channel is used to bombard you.
Okay.
So those cases, what we can do is there is a business level rate limiting or a quota management kind of mechanism where the API gateway can say, fintech A, you're only allowed to make so many calls. After that, either we burst you or either we drop your request after some time. So that way, an API opened by bank for 5 or 6 fintech providers does not get hit if only one of them has been compromised.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the API itself has to be intelligent in some sense.
Not exactly. We can actually build this into the gateway itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's part of the gateway intelligence. Okay.
Yeah.
Since you mentioned about customer consent, couple of you mentioned. Let me come to Sony and Mr. Thomas. In terms of how do you educate your customers in terms whether when they're giving consent to an outside party to use the data in the bank, to use the offerings of the bank, is there some kind of thing you have worked out how to educate your customers? And for example, both of you have customers within India and abroad as well. There's a huge migrant population that you serve, not migrant, but people who have migrated to outside India, wherever, Middle East or elsewhere, which is part of your customer base. How do you educate these customers in terms of any API related or open banking related security issues or privacy issues?
Well, the first part about your question is pretty valid in terms of you already have a scenario in places like India where there is a huge digital growth that is happening, disruption that is happening, and transactions are going exponentially. The chances of frauds are also increasing in a significant manner on the customer side. Also, apart from the threats that you mentioned on the organizations, there are a lot of attacks that are happening purely based on social engineering techniques. So it becomes a challenge for the customer to distinguish when the bank themselves say that, please don't click on a link, please don't share the OTP, and then you're actually getting a third party to share a link or share something with you, wherein you have to end up giving the OTP. So yes, there's a challenge, but then the broad contours of the account aggregator model, even in the first model, see, there are 2 models in India on open banking, one of which is very successful, which was the UPI one on the payment side. And now on the non-financial side, you have the account aggregator model, which is coming in a regulated manner. Now, in all the other cases till now, there have been singular instances of, for example, Reserve Bank came down heavily on a lot of fintechs collecting data directly from the bureaus last year. And the bureaus
Okay.
have then come back to the bank and then devise some kind of a mechanism where they get a customer consent in some form before fetching the scores. No, that's already there. Now, account aggregator is actually going to make the whole process institutionalized in a framework wherein it's clearly mentioned as to what are the different forms of authentication that can be asked. But
Hmm.
that said, educating the customer in terms of this is how it is going to happen, those are the kind of things that will take a lot of time. But one thing that we can be very very confident about is the fact that RBI is a very very strong regulator when it comes to customer awareness. In fact, the first stake is always with the customer, and therefore even in these kind of cases, wherever the bank engages a third party, it has almost been made mandatory that the bank who is actually providing the service should
Hmm.
also be shown as one of the partners, so that the customer is not misled by any inadvertent phishing links or anything that is an attempt to take his credentials. But the threat
Interesting.
still remains.
Very
Yeah,
interesting.
I concur with Sony. And
Uh-huh.
one area which banks can do is that they do a good due diligence about their partners.
Okay.
Because earlier Shan has mentioned that the Shan and earlier Sharath also mentioned the compromise at the third party side is going to be a common scenario because we banks are not sure about the security concerns or the seriousness security governance, especially the security governance at the partner or third party side. So
Mm-hmm.
one point which banks always can do is that I don't know how practical it could be, but do a proper due diligence and audit of the partner before entering into the partnership and see that they are maintaining their standards throughout the journey. It is difficult. It is
Yeah,
very
yeah.
easy to say, but it is very difficult to get into this practice, into a practical solution. And educating customers is going to be a very tricky and difficult affair because this it has to be continuous activity. And I think
Hmm.
our regulators, RBI, is doing it continuously. If you can see that, I think RBI is putting up a lot of ads in the TV and all the what you call media about
Okay.
educating customers about ombudsman scheme, minimum balance scheme, and all those things. That is one good trend. In addition to that, banks are also making customers aware because this for the CKYC registration, for account aggregation registration, customer has to be aware that we are going to share the data, my data, our data with other banks
Mm-hmm.
or a common pool of, even though we say that we cannot make customer aware about the technicality of how account aggregator setup works.
Correct. Obviously.
Basically, we can ensure the customer that this is a regulated environment. Your data will not be residing any middle parties place, but it is going to transacting getting between the financial regulated entities. But these are difficult. But as we proceed further, we should have what you call more stringent rules or stringent measures devised by us. As we learn from our mistakes, we will identify more velocity or something beyond that. Something is going getting stored somewhere. So I think there will some things will come out. Like I think Shan will be more expert in saying that there will be some what you call security implementation so that we can identify some breach of data immediately. There will be something else, it will be coming.
Okay. Okay.
So basically, this customer education and regulators following the regulations, everything goes hand in hand. And hopefully, with the ecosystem, and if you do a good audit and identify, know your partner, KYP, maybe next
Okay.
step for the banks will be know your partners and
KYP.
those who are connecting to your ecosystem. Know your API partner will be the next step which banks may have to embark upon.
That sounds
So that's
interesting.
my
I was just
I'll,
wondering, do you see
I'll,
any difference between an approach towards regulated and non-regulated entities? Should banks have one
regulated.
approach for regulated and another approach for those who are not regulated?
Yeah, basically, a
Does that
regulated
make
entity
sense?
means at least there is some regulatory overseeing is there. So
But
bank
does that
can
make
rely.
sense?
Pardon?
Does that make sense to have two approaches, one for regulated, one for non-regulated?
But banks should have those who are entering into partnership should have a baseline, whether it is regulated or unregulated, there should be a baseline, but we can have a, what you call, there is always, you can have a premium on the regulated entities. At least we should be relying on our regulator, their actions on the regulated entities. We should be relying on the other part, unregulated entities. I think we should be a little bit more careful. That is my opinion.
I'll just like to add, Manoj, one point. Today,
sure.
the framework that is coming, especially on the account aggregator, where there is an FIU who is actually going to consume most of this data, has to be in a regulated environment. So, and then with the privacy data protection bill round the corner, it's only going to get more tighter for any person to consume any form of personal and sensitive data. So, unregulated entities consuming data through an API would be confined to the non-sensitive ones. That's the road ahead that I'm seeing.
So
Shan,
I'll just add one stuff.
Yeah,
exactly
on that same
to
line.
what Mr. Soni mentioned, that if you look at how it's being implemented around the world, if you look at CDR or Australia's version of it, there is a registrar, and all the fintechs have to be registered with the registrar, and where they get the rating. And based upon the rating that the central body or the registrar gives, they can get specific amount of data based upon the data classification. So it does not mean that if I'm registered with the registrar, I can pull down any data, I can do any read or write transaction on your banking accounts. It doesn't work that way. They will have ratings, and so the word is not regulated or unregulated for them. They have these categories or grades of fintech providers. And
very interesting.
And the registrar piece is common in MAS or Singapore version of fintech as well, or open banking as well. There is a registrar. So for any bank to talk to a fintech or vice versa, they both have to go and register with the registrar, and they have to, the matchmaking has to happen, which basically happens in the form of secure certificates. And these certificates are used by each other to identify, a bank is able to identify this is this fintech that is trying to connect with me. This is on top of the user authentication and user consent management. This is basically identifying the fintech and letting you know that this fintech can get this kind of data from our systems.
That sounds like a very good approach at the first appearance. What about other entities, like commercial entities, like an airline or a hotel or a retailer, Amazon types?
I have an interesting story to share. It's a customer whose name we cannot take because it happened somewhere. This is a nice banking organization opening up its API to fintech, and the fintech then opened up their APIs to underlying markets, saying that a mall or an online platform can use my platform to do this payment with the bank directly. But this particular first platform or the first entry that the user sees, right? What happened at this particular platform was there was some coding errors what was there on their platform. And some hacker actually found out that there is this problem wherein this particular platform was giving loyalty points, and the loyalty points were not being checked at the backend system, but it was actually checked on the UI itself. Which is like a very rookie mistake to make, but things like this happen because you have small firms trying to quickly come up, trying to monetize this scenario. And this mistake was there. Somebody figured it out, and they went ahead and actually loaded. They didn't even have to load their wallets. They just synthetically increased the loyalty points that was there and used these loyalty points to purchase prepaid calling cards. So there were multiple parties in this particular fraud that happened, and everyone was pointing fingers like, I didn't do anything. I got a request. The bank said, I got a request. And then who is responsible for paying the money, right? So there was a big problem that we actually uncovered a long time ago. Not long. This was a case that happened last year.
How long did it take to figure out?
It took a long time because of all the different parties that were involved. And this is in a country where there is the legal regulation of the registrar doesn't exist.
Oh, that's tricky actually. I mean,
yeah.
The more connected you are, you really don't know where the problem really lies. Interesting. I want to come to another interesting aspect of APIs, slightly shifting the discussion. So wherever there is a lot of data, there's, analytics, it becomes important. And what I understand is lots and lots of data is flowing through these APIs, particularly payment APIs and perhaps others as well. What interesting kind of analytics opportunities do you see for the banks through all the data that can be processed relating to the APIs? Maybe Sharath wants to say something.
Yeah, I think see the point is being a platform player is all about data and data monetization at some level. Obviously,
Ah.
there are regulations for a bank about what you can monetize, how you can monetize based on RBI guidelines, and the related this thing of what you can use as part of this API and what you cannot use as part of the API.
Okay. Okay.
So there are regulatory constraints within which you need to work. And secondly, for anything that is regulatorily allowed, where customer consent is available and all, this forms a huge opportunity from a data sciences or data analytics perspective to one increase your acquisition pipeline. Maybe we can open up the acquisition pipeline in a particular manner. We could partner with the partners to provide an aggregated view of customer cohorts, customer classification, and others, and possibly provide a more enhanced experience through the bank and through the partner in some cases. But obviously, there, if data is being shared by two entities, the partner and by us, we need to ensure that customer consent is definitely there. Then the other aspects of analytics definitely include fraud and fraud detection and other stuff. So I think I would look at these three, and then using machine learning algorithms for any of these kind of things, creating loyalty products across various partners that you have, all those kind of things are definitely possibilities.
Okay. Any other business or analytics examples that can lead to better business?
Just very quickly, I know we are just approaching time. So, like in the stock exchange scenario, we have a lot of data which get disseminated using the TCP/IP currently, which using multicast methodology, and people listen to the systems like most of trading platforms, like you see on your various channels, and a lot of all these banking colleagues also have the investment management systems where they have the price feeds consumptions being carried out. All these price feed is currently coming with this proprietary protocol based on multicast and all. So now there are API based approach has been also set up where we are leveraging the cloud. We are hosting these APIs on the cloud, and people can do the like a channel browsing like you do. So you can get the one particular set of stock symbols, their prices, fetched using the APIs, rather than like when you subscribe to price feeds. So suppose there are in Bank Nifty, there are say 150 stocks are there, 1,000 stocks are there. So all the prices of 1,000 stocks will come. So or you want to subscribe to all the entire price feed or exchange, then you will get entire set of stocks together. So what we are doing, that we are providing the API so you can have a snapshot of price feeds. Then we are also working on like lot of brokers or trading members who are there. They are mom and pop shop. They can't afford really high quality data scientists and all, but they require some value added services as a some research being done on that. So we have we are doing some analytics on the on some of the price feeds, and that price feed analytics service we are hosting on the cloud as a API, and we are giving that as a value added services. Initially, we have done pilot as a free service, and then after quarter we are charging them actually. So once they get used to that, how it is to be used and leveraged, and they still want to go ahead. So for first quarter it is free, and after that is chargeable basis.
That makes sense. That makes sense. The example, Sony and Babu, one example if you can give recently.
Yeah, basically it is not an example. It is just how you monetize or how you capitalize the data through data you are getting through API open banking. see, to look back to your existing products and services, basically how the APIs given are used to being used by your partners to service your customer only in a better way, it seems. So you can go back and look back and do an introspection why we are not doing, or whether we can offer better thing. That is one possibility. I think it is because a bank will be acting as an aggregator with all these partners. So a bank will be having a bird's eye view. That's a macro view on how the different kind of customers will be behaving and how they will be responding to the products and offerings.
Okay.
That will be good insight for each bank.
Yes.
I'll
Only
just
one example.
Yeah, I'll just give us a brief example of what we have done some time back using a fintech partnership. See, it's a classic story that the banks are confined to do only banking, and we can't probably do what a fintech does, 100 many other things. So therefore, we have to really choose our courses very wisely. And this example is one where we thought, if the fintechs can actually come and get information about my customers' data, why can't I think like a fintech and go and do a partnership? So my partner actually does an aggregation of the e-com sites, and the offer that I give to my customer on my portal is one where he can come and do a comparison of the good or service that he actually wants to get from an Amazon or a Flipkart. So whatever arbitrage opportunity is there for the customer, he's able to do. He's able to do a price comparison, and then he gets the product or chooses the product that he wants. That platform is mine, which I partner with the fintech.
Mhm.
Now, from there, I can't do the fulfillment because none of the e-com companies allow me to do the fulfillment on an API in a large manner. So therefore, I have to do a handshake and give the customer back to the actual final destination of either Amazon or Flipkart or Infibeam, where he has
Okay.
found the best deal. But at the same time, I'm actually getting information about what the customer A has searched for, B, what is a good and service that he's actually zeroed in on. Now,
Yes.
from that data, there are two possibilities. One is, of course, as Babu was mentioning, I can then go ahead and do a lot of analytics and start offering him personal loan, etc. But even if I don't do that, I mean, at least I know what exactly is it that has happened, because I get data from these e-com players through the fintech on what the customer has actually purchased. And that actually also gives me a little bit of referral commissions, which I can share back to the customer. So all of this is a win-win story, where each stakeholder gets a piece of what the revenue, and there is significant amount of data that I'm able to understand in terms of what my customer really needs. So this is one simple example, and there are so many others that my colleagues can actually share that they have done at their end. But this is
Okay.
one classic example of how we can actually leverage on that journey.
If you can most of the examples I always see pertain to retail banking, whether it's relating to e-commerce or account aggregation or something. But what about corporate banking and SME banking and transaction banking, supply chain finance? Do you see APIs making a role there, making a difference there?
Yeah, so that's already happened. See, the big change that has happened, the India stack that we started off with Aadhaar, we started off with mobile being one piece, and then there are so many other things that has got added on. Earlier, it was only PAN. Today, we have an API layer which actually gives you access right up to the GST portals, up to so many fintechs and so many companies are actually providing tons and tons of data about corporates, about SMEs. Even SMEs who typically don't come under the ambit of GST, there are other non-traditional sources from where fintechs are now collating data. It could be, so many field agents who are going to the SMEs to collect or provide a service from whom you get to know about the customer's behavior. So the API layer in that is actually getting built both through the structured manner. GST is a classic example, and the unstructured manner, wherein I'm getting using
Okay.
non-traditional sources. So that game is on. It may not be as evolved as the retail story yet, but there is a lot of opportunity and a lot of promise that is seen there.
That's interesting. We have Prasanna. Hi, Prasanna. Welcome. Can you hear me?
Yes, Manoj sir, very good evening. Sorry, couldn't join on time because of this long pending call, so couldn't join. So sorry
No,
for that. But
no,
always,
that's fine.
yeah,
So the question we were just discussing when you came in was, we discussed variety of examples of use of API, and
yeah.
in retail banking it happens a lot. We're just wondering whether in SME banking, corporate banking, supply chain finance, transaction banking, all those things, are there
Yes, yes.
opportunities for using APIs to make things more efficient?
Yes, sir, absolutely. So we have an opportunity, and if you do not take that opportunity, the risk is that your bank will not really do the better service for existing customer, also the future customers, because everything is moving on to, say example, you to talk about any of those SMEs today, right? Every SME is going digital. There are initiatives, digital initiatives happening across India, so that more and more SMEs will go on to digital platform. So as a bank, if you have to reach out to the same customer, same SME who is doing banking with the multiple banks, you have to be there. So suppose today I am, as a SME, I am doing banking with one bank A. So I would like to do a bank B, provided what rates and what is that available, right? So say example, at a DCB, we have co-created a product with a fintech, just like a Tally or a, so wherein accounting and everything happens at a SME end, and this SME can connect to the multiple banks. He can switch back from DCB bank to some other bank, and through that banking, apart from projection and daily inventory and invoicing, or a GST filing can happen through these APIs which we provide to the SME. As well as we get to know the data of that SME, how that SME is performing. Say example, in a Maharashtra region, how many of our SMEs are there and who are utilizing the software, which is open banking software, and how every SME is performing. Does that SME require some lending support, right? Based upon what transactions are going on. So, and as well as on he don't have to toggle between corporate internet banking and onto this app. So within that app, he has a view of open banking, right? Open bank, he can do the fund transfer, he can request for a mini statement or a balance inquiry within that window of that software. How it has happened? So as a part of open banking, there could be 2-3 types of open banking scenarios, right? One is an one-on-one API connect. We are providing API, or one could be like this platform. So within a platform, complete bank is embedded. Or in somebody else's platform, like within Ola, my API is there, right? Or within my mobile app, Ola is being incorporated, like in Kotak they have done, right? So I think tomorrow's, in a nutshell, Manoj sir, I think while we had internet banking, mobile banking, or ATM as a channel, tomorrow every fintech is one of the channel for the bank, wherein we are onboarding our APIs to the so today we have an API based platform for Zippy, which Zippy utilizes all the APIs like Aadhaar, eKYC, or PAN validations, or DD, so that at a 20-25 minutes of journey of a customer, he is able to open account on my internal platform. Why not I open up all these APIs to ABC Bazaar or some marketplace, right? Where that marketplace drives that open banking with a multiple banks. So bank can choose which is that product. Okay, DCB provides this product here. I can go, so straight through process account opening happens from that platform, market platform, to the bank. So, and I think another view, look at how India as a country moving on open banking, the way European Union had a PSD2, or many country has their own standards. So we are coming up with account aggregator mechanism, right? So these entities, there are 7, 8, 9 entities like Cookie Jar and CAMS and so on, and where on the left side all the data points are available, like banks and the GSTN, and how these data points will be utilized by fintechs or the beneficiaries, it will happen in a standardized mechanism. There will be API standards. If I'm calling a beneficiary, if I'm calling a fund transfer or a balance, so this standardization API will happen through account aggregator. Today, DCB will have a 7-8 APIs like account opening, or a mini statement, or a fund transfer, or some invoice APIs. Same APIs will be available with RBL or Kotak, but API definitions will be different for them. So for a fintech who want to collaborate with the 3 banks, we'll have to do river for 3 times.
Okay.
So with account aggregator, itself standardization will bring on for this whole gamuts, right? And that wherein we can save lot of time around these integrations and so on. So I think that's another way to look at how complete ecosystem moving here.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
And the last interesting point I would say, Manoj sir, that today for a bank, customer is a human being. Human being comes and do transaction for him for a fund transfer, bill payment. But tomorrow's customers will be, once we have a 5G, right? Today, human being is there because he utilizes mobile phone. So tomorrow, this mobile phone will be accelerated by 5G network. There will be multiple other devices like wearables, or your refrigerator or your car, they will be accelerated by quantum computing or a 5G, right?
Okay.
Then more and more API game will be there. IoT plus API, right? So your variables will do the financial transaction on your own, the way you configure them.
Based. Okay.
You will
Got it.
tell refrigerator to order the food, right? So your API has to connect to the nearest shopping mall, and the payment should happen through that payment API. I will not be surprised. I will not be surprised. Some of the car manufacturing company will tie up some of the banks from initially. He
Car
provide
manufacturer.
banking support in my car, right? Your
Okay.
APIs has to be integrated for my McDonald's or any of those services I am offering.
Hmm.
So, and it's a reality outside of the world, right? Outside of India, it is already happening. So while we will have a standardization of APIs, banks will also mature to see which business models will be there for their customers.
Very
Say it could be
interesting.
a retail customer or could be SME customer. So I think API is a must thing. The way mobile banking is a must for every bank to survive. API is a must thing for API banking, a strategy around API banking, or having a team within a bank, or a strategy or buying in from a top. It's very very important for every bank to succeed here onwards. If they are not able to do that, I think I'll be like saying that there are very few banks as of now, but it's a great opportunity for every bank because India is a huge market, right?
For
And
sure.
and every business model will go from client server to the marketplace kind of thing. When we'll
Marketplace.
have a lot of sharing economies like food or a car, like we have Ola, Uber, right? Or we have a
Okay.
food like Zomato's and Swiggy's. So like that, 300 plus entities will go on this aggregation model.
Very interesting. Thank
And when
you.
it will go more and more API will game will picture, then people will forget mobile banking, people will forget internet banking, people will always look at a service, right? Non-banking service, everything's on a platform.
So banking
And
will become invisible.
banking will be one of the service, telecom will be one of the
One
service,
of those.
that will be one of the service. So those platform will be very prominent platform, people will look at it. Then again one regulation will come to regulate that platform, that is a future, but that's how I can see this whole API banking journey for banks in India.
Great. Thank you very much, Prasanna. You are actually preempted what my final. So, gentlemen, we are coming towards the end of the session given the time constraints. All of you will have to go on to further activities. So, my final question, takeaway, is there any particular takeaway, or what do you think will happen in 2021? And what do you think you wish you want to happen in 2021 when it comes to open banking and APIs? What these two basic things, if you can summarize each of you, what is a new thing that will happen, and what is a new thing you wish will happen? Shiv Kumarji, if you can
So
start.
I think, yeah, I believe, I wish that 5G comes much faster so that these APIs really can thrive. The 5G based connectivity will give the great promotion to the platform business. And these platforms are definitely, foundation and the hands and legs and all the extension mechanism, everything is through APIs.
Okay.
So we see that I wish that 5G, comes very, very fast and it spreads like Corona.
The positive version of Corona. Shan, do you
Yeah.
see any correlation between F5 and 5G?
Yes, we do work with 5G. We have solutions that provide security for 5G. I don't think it's the right platform, but we can talk about technical details of how some of our components are playing important role when you open up 5G networks.
Okay.
But
So, what is your forecast for 2021? The
so,
wish
being a
list and the
security
forecast.
practitioner, I personally see that as more APIs open, there will be more attacks that will be coming towards the API web.
Ah,
Right? So that is inevitable. We will see interesting ways in which people will try to compromise APIs. So I'll give you a very simple example. Like most people that I talk to who leverage platforms like API Gateway and talk about, oh, we are using protocols like OAuth to secure our APIs.
uh-huh.
we forget that even with the protocols, there are multiple simpler configuration or smaller configurations here and there which are built for specific purposes. For example, if we look at OAuth 2.0, which is the de facto right now in almost all API implementation, I'm sure most people in this panel would have seen it in their platform as well. So when you have this protocol and when you're trying to authenticate and authorize a user, the the grant type that you use is called authorization code flow grant, and there are some native hidden vulnerabilities over there, which is fixed by extension. And most of the banks that I talk to have implemented the protocol, but they have forgotten the extension. So as more APIs become evident, these smaller gaps that were there, right, will start showing up more. And I just hope there's not many major breach and things can be fixed in time.
So we know more auditing of the APIs from the security
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah.
Okay. Sharath, what would you say as what's going to happen and what do you wish would happen?
I think we've seen some wonderful things in terms of the UPI and other stuff. Like, for example, if you look at PhonePe or GPay or any of these UPI PSPs,
Mm-hmm.
an open banking model that has worked very well. I think next year is going to be a continuation of this. We will see a lot more fintechs coming into this space, banks opening up a lot more APIs. And as regulators, I would assume that on top of account aggregator and DEPA, we're going to see some very robust customer consent models, which will enable both the bank to implement and assuredly be sure that the third party which is leveraging these APIs is using the APIs in a data in a consistent and safe manner. And I would believe that with that, we will see a lot more innovative products come up
Yes.
by fintechs and new startups, which will leverage this thing. For example, Airtel Bank has 100 million customers. Now, if somebody comes in and says, "Hey, in this area, I'm going to build this unique proposition," that would be a lot of value addition for the customers and also for us as a bank. Right? I would see a lot more niche products that would be coming up, leveraging these APIs in the next couple of years, I would believe.
Thank you. That's interesting. Sony, what would you say?
Well, my closing thoughts are that it's going to be a two-pronged race. The fintechs, the neobanks, they're going to start building a house on Lego, because everything is going to be componentized, and you will have a composite banking kind of scenario. Whereas traditional bankers or the incumbents would have to rethink about constructing the Legos in the right places so that the plugins can actually be done in a decent fashion. So this journey will be slightly different for both. While the incumbents could think about a gateway, which is what most of us have done, but then that probably may not be enough, because even at the back end you would have to do a lot of re-architecturing to ensure that the components are indeed components, that they're not dependent on other things. And as far as what I foresee in the future, well, we'll have to have, one, as all of us know, I think the regulators are going to come down heavily along with promoting the digital part, wherein the most important triad of confidentiality, integrity, and availability, or the CIA, with availability now becoming a big hot topic. I think that's going to be very, very keenly watched in all these growth stories. So the regulators are also going to have a very calibrated approach. While they allow and promote digital growth, they're going to ensure that confidentiality, integrity, and availability, including availability, because that's been the latest thing, all of them are going to be seen in a very significant term in the next few years.
Very interesting. Babu, what would you like to say as your closing comments? And
yeah, I can see Sony mentioned regulator coming up with a framework for the APIs and fintech partnership with banks. That is sure to come. We can see it coming in somewhere in the end of 2021. But my wish is the just opposite. If for regulation means you may lose some of those niche and exotic specific products which people will have in mind, we will have, because everybody knows that one size does not fit for all. So this regulations will be always like a one size for all. So it is just a conflicting views from me. Regulation should be there, but meanwhile it should not impede or it should not hamper the innovative spirit by which the new technology or the kind of products which are being framed or formed. So that is my wish. Regulation plus innovation
Balanced
existing.
regulation. You're looking for
Yeah,
balanced
exactly.
regulation. So, Prasanna, your closing remarks briefly.
Yeah, I think I'm all with Basin sir or what everybody is talking, Babu sir and Sarath. I think it's a 2021. We still will have a adoption with the fintechs and not most, but few banks will always on the API banking journey. But I think 22, 23 by 25 it will be more huge better game when your 5G will be quite mature and the customers will drive that whole journey, right? So I
Okay.
think customers may not look at bank as a actually primary source of doing banking, but it will be like the way we had a Google Pays or Phone Pays. We'll have a many more such partners or many more such a tech companies will come and using backend APIs by the banks, they will serve the customers. So I think and one more important aspect in this journey, I think communication, right? It always drives how we are building a interface to the customer. So pandemic has given some opportunity to be more agile and more contactless, more touchless, more on voice, right? People don't want to touch and this and that. So I think on those lines, augmented reality, virtual reality will pick up more. Why? Because the big giants like Geos or Googles and Apples will make it more cheaper, those devices,
Uh-huh.
right? And once those devices will more cheaper, millennial customers will adopt a more there. So instead of going on website, they will be glued on to the augmented reality. So it may not be the true in the next 2-3 years, but in the over a period of time, that could be the way, right? That could be the way to
Okay.
look at it. But realistic as a banker, we always do in align with the regulation. How we are integrating our things to the any fintechs. One fintech, say example, I am integrating with the ABC Bazaar, for example, and
Okay.
this ABC Bazaar might have a million customers, and a similar number of customers, maybe less than that, one bank might have. It means that it is an as good as a new channel you are creating with only one fintech, right? Just imagine if we have a robust platform, secure platform where plug and play thing is very easy. Say example in 2000 when we started our POS journey in 2008, 2000, 2001 and so on,
Mm-hmm.
wherein the adoption of a POS has really happened post demonetization. There were hardly 11 lakhs of a POS or 12 lakhs of POS until 2016, and after that it has gone multifolds, right?
Okay.
Because of the need of
Adoption.
industry. And the earlier when you have to deploy a POS, it is to take 8 to 9 days, 10 days, at times
Mm.
15 days. Now this has reduced to half a day, right? If you deploy a POS, all the peripherals networks, it's all secure, whole thing is ready for that merchant. Similarly, we need to see platform players like Infosys or IBMs who are already embarking on the core bankings and so on. They should leverage on that journey and create a better open banking platform for a bank, so that
Okay.
adoption or a plug and play should becomes like a easier half a day task, rather than today it's a reality, right? It takes 5 to 10 days or maybe more than to integrate one fintech partner within a bank, right? Although we talk a lot about regulatory sandbox or account aggregator, but the reality when we start integrating those, right, there are, apart from technical integration, there are many more other aspects, governance aspect, whether compliance aspect.
I really had, when you talked about um this augmented reality and 3D reality, I actually had high hopes for Google Glass. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, but maybe something else will come up in the near future that
Yes.
can provide that facility. So, on behalf of Banking Frontiers, I thank you all very, very much for a very interesting and insightful discussion.